Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about dark history's very own hatchet-wielding spinster. Today we're talking about the life of Lizzie Borden. On August the 3rd, 1892, Abby would go upstairs to clean the guest room, as it was their live-in maid's Bridget Sullivan's job, but she would do it as a way to help. Bridget Sullivan, however, would be outside throwing up from the food poisoning that they had suffered a few days prior. And while this was going on, Lizzie Borden would be downstairs, and even though her father had instructed to keep all doors locked at all times due to a robbery that had happened prior, she would leave the back door unlocked. Abby would be cleaning the room when she would turn around and be face to face with her assailant, an unknown person who would be wielding a hatchet way above their head. They would bring the hatchet down on Abby Borden's head, where she would turn around and fall over and get some contusions on her nose and face. The assailant would then bring the hatchet down on Abby's head 17 more times, killing her. Around 10:30 that morning, Andrew Borden would be returning back from his morning walk as he normally would. He would take the keys out of his pocket and go to unlock the front door, and it would seem that the front door would be jammed, so he would start knocking on the door, pounding on it for someone to come unlock the door. Live-in maid Bridget Sullivan would walk over to the door as the back door was unlocked, and she would go to try to unlock the front door and realize it was jammed. It is said that she would utter a curse before opening the door or trying to open the door. She would later tell the police that while she was trying to jimmy with the front door, she could hear Lizzie Borden laughing upstairs, which, by accounts at this time, Abby Borden would have already been killed. She would also tell the police that after opening the door, she would walk over with Andrew Borden and help take off his boots so he could put his slippers on and just relax and take his nap as he normally would. But crime photos would actually contradict this statement, as when Andrew Borden was found, he would still have his boots on. When Andrew walked in the house, he immediately would question where his wife Abby was. At this time, Lizzie was already downstairs, and she would inform her father that a messenger had arrived and summoned Abby to a sick friend's house. But as we both know, she was nowhere near a sick friend's house, but was actually upstairs dead. Bridget Sullivan would be cleaning the outside windows on the third floor around 11:10 that morning, where she would hear Lizzie yelling for her from the downstairs, yelling, "Quick, come down, father's been killed, somebody came and killed him." Bridget would actually start running downstairs, making her way to the sitting room where Lizzie was yelling from, where she would find Andrew Borden slumped over his couch, and it would seem that he had been struck in the head with a sharp object about 10 or 11 times. It should also be noted when Bridget had arrived down there where Lizzie was, he was still bleeding, so it is very apparent that the attack was very recent. It's also been noted that he would be struck with such force and such ferocity that one of the hits in his face would actually cut his eye completely in half. And by the state that Andrew Borden was in, it was apparent that he was completely asleep when the assailant had attacked him. He would just go to nap in the sitting room and just never wake up. They would quickly go seek the help of Dr. Bowen, who would quickly run over to the residence and would confirm that not only Abby Borden, but Andrew Borden were both pronounced dead around 11 a.m. Police would say that the initial reports of Lizzie Borden and accounts of what happened that morning were very contradictory and very, very not concurrent, as her stories never really lined up. Originally, she would say that she would hear a scraping noise or a groaning sound or a distress call before entering her house. And then 2 hours later, she would recant that statement and say that she heard nothing at all. When she was asked about her mother Abby, herself and Bridget would say that Abby received a message that she needed to go tend to a sick friend, and that she had theorized that after getting home she had went upstairs to clean the upstairs house. But Bridget Sullivan's statement would recant whatever Lizzie Borden would say, as she would say earlier, as they were witnessing the grisly scene of Andrew Borden, they would have a neighbor coming over, Mrs. Churchill, and they would actually go up the stairs to go check on the second floor to see where Abby was. And how the floor design was of the house is, as you're walking up the stairs, you walk up into the second floor. So as they were almost to the top of the steps, the tops of their faces would actually be at the floor of the second floor, and they would actually see in the guest room Abby's body slumped over. Police also made a statement that they did not like the attitude of Lizzie Borden during the investigation, as they said that she was way too calm and poised for someone that had lost not only her father but stepmother. Adding to that and her constant changing alibis, the most surprising thing about this, she was not considered as a material witness or a key person of interest, nor was she even checked for bloodstains. The police would do a cursory inspection in her room, but not a full-on investigation, as they would say when they went to fully inspect her room, they couldn't because Lizzie was not feeling well. Subsequently, the police were criticized very heavily for their lack of diligence. The police would also notice that in the basement there was various hatchets and axes placed in the basement, and they were positioned in such a way that the police actually suspected that the placing of the axes and hatchets were very deliberate to make it seem that it was staged. One of the key things was there would be some axes and hatchets that were very dusty, but there would be others that had no dust on them whatsoever. More specifically, a hatchet handle that had the head of the hatchet actually broken off. But none of these items would actually be taken from the basement by the police due to the unfamiliar illness that had stricken the family prior to the murders. They would actually perform autopsies on Andrew Borden and Abby to check for poison in their stomachs because of the sudden illness that they were stricken with. They would test it for poison, but unfortunately no signs of poison would actually show up, which would actually confirm that their food poisoning was in fact from the dry mutton, which would confirm that Lizzie did not poison her family with cyanide that she had previously asked for a prescription of. The actual acid that she had asked for was cyanide acid, or hydrocyanic acid. But the doctor that would do the autopsies, like I said, would not find any antiseptic poison properties in their bodies. Some accounts would say that John Morse, the uncle to Emma and Lizzie, would actually still stay in the guest room where Abby is murdered, but actual accounts would contradict this statement, as it said after the murders he would actually move up to the attic and sleep up there. And after the murders, not only would John Morse stay the night with the girls, but a fellow friend, Alice Russell, would actually stay the night with the girls as well. Police would actually be stationed around the house on August 4th, and one police officer would testify and say that later that night on August 4th, he would actually witness Lizzie Borden and Alice Russell walking outside the house with a kerosene lamp and walking into the cellar with a slop pail and mop. On August the 5th, John Morse would actually leave the house to go home, but he was actually approached by a mob of hundreds of people to where the police would have to escort him back to the Borden house. And it's around there that police would do a more thorough check. And it's around this time that police would actually find the broken-handled head of the hatchet that was broken off that was found in the basement. It's also said that the mayor and various other peoples would visit the Borden house that night, and they would inform Lizzie Borden that she was a suspect in the murders. And it's also said that after this was said, Alice Russell would actually testify and say that she found Lizzie Borden outside the back of the house the next day tearing up a dress. Lizzie Borden would tell Russell that she was tearing it up because the dress was actually covered in paint and was planning on burning it. But it was never confirmed if it was covered in paint or if it was the blood-stained dress she wore when she murdered her stepmother and father.